Hello, all the sinners and saints. Today we're going to look at the Lillelid Murders. Share the screen. Whenever my video does that, it reminds me of that Max guy or whatever it was. Only my older people will know. Okay, here we go. The Lillelid Murders. Here's your warnings. Maybe. The killer's fault. Okay, today we're going to cover the topics of church convention, the rest area, kidnapping, and death. There was a group of 6 individuals, 3 girls, 3 guys, and this is the hotel they stayed at for a couple of days, and they would perform satanic rituals, do witchcraft. They burned oh my God, Satan's star thing into the carpet, actually burned it into it, and sacrificed animals, the whole 9 yards. The convention. I'll give you a little background on Delphina and Vidal. In 1997 in Tennessee, all accounts of the Lillelid family were that they were good people. Vidal was born in Norway in 1962. He was the youngest of 4. Then he moved to Florida where when he was in his 20s. He met his wife Delphina, which was born in New York, March 1969. The couple married in 1989 in Miami, Florida, and had a daughter the following year named Tabitha. After Tabitha's birth, the family looked for a peaceful place to raise their children away from the big city. They decided on Knoxville, Tennessee. Their son Peter was born in 1995, and by the end of 1996, they moved from the apartment into their dream house. It was a 50-year-old house in the Powell community where they had plans to renovate the annex for Delphina's mother. Vidal worked as a bellman at the Holiday Inn in Cedar Bluff in West Knoxville, while Delphina remained at home and raised the children and homeschooled them as well. They were deeply religious and devoted Jehovah's Witnesses. On the 6th of April, 1997, they attended a religious convention at Freedom Hall in Johnson City, which was about 100 miles away from where they actually lived. The family traveled home after the convention was over in 1987 in their 1987 Dodge minivan heading south on Interstate 81. Just before 7:20 in the evening, they pulled over into a rest area at the mile marker 41 around the halfway point back to their home. 2-year-old Peter was suffering from an earache and was feeling restless, so Vidal took him for a walk while Delphina took Tabitha and headed into the bathroom area to use the restrooms. Delphina stopped to chat with a friend, Karen Sinclair, and her teenage daughter, Kara, who were heading home from the convention as well. Vidal and Peter were waiting by the door at the visitor center whenever two young girls came out, Vidal smiled at them and asked them if they believed in God, to which they replied that they did not. Two young men then joined them, and that's when Vidal asked them if they would like to learn more about the man, about God. The man said that they would, and the two young men, which was 20-year-old Joseph Rosner, 14-year-old Jason Bryant, along with the two women, which was 18 and 17, Karen Howe and Natasha Cornett, headed over to the picnic area where Vidal and Peter, who now had been joined by Delphina and Tabitha, Vidal began talking through the basics of the Jehovah Witness faith while Delphina waved goodbye to her friend Karen. Shortly after, Joseph went over to his car where two other friends, 19-year-old Edward Mullins and 18-year-old Crystal Sturgill, were waiting. Joseph returned back to the group with his 9mm gun and he pulled it out and he said, "I'm sorry about this. Everybody, just be quiet and nothing's going to happen to y'all. We need your van." Excuse me. Joseph knew that his own car, a blue Chevy Citation, was on its last leg and had seen the family arrive in the minivan just a few minutes earlier. Joseph had also picked up a speeding ticket an hour or so earlier as the group traveled through Gate City in Virginia. That, together with the fact that the car was stolen and he had two stolen guns, some of the money, the car wasn't stolen, it was his mother's car, but they had two stolen guns in the car. Some money before they had left their hometown of Betsy Lane in Kentucky. This meant that they needed a reliable car to make it to their escape before the families and the police would catch up to them. And now the families would be the ones that they stole from. With gun in hand, Joseph ordered the family to return to their minivan. Vidal offered to give the group his wallet and keys, but they refused. That's a bad sign. The family were then forced into the van with Natasha, Karen, Joseph, Jason, Valdale. I don't know why I can't say that right. Valdale was made to drive, and as they pulled out of the rest area, Edward and Crystal followed in Joseph's car. All six of the group had extremely troubled pasts, broken homes, and academic failures, emotional and sexual abuse, drug use, and alcohol were the most common themes in the group. 2 days earlier, they had stayed in the Collie Hotel on US 23 in Pikeville, Kentucky, where they had started to burn 666 into the carpet. They had also took part in sacrifices and satanic rituals, and it was believed that they had their own sinister plans that may have begun to take shape. They returned to Natasha's trailer after the motel stay and told his mother excuse me, told her mother, Madonna Wallen, that they were going to start an Armageddon with Karen, adding that the end of the world is coming on Sunday, the 6th of April. She didn't specify a year, so we might want to watch out for that. The group went to the home of the police officer where Jason created a disturbance outside of the district to distract the officer. This is my own handwriting I'm trying to read, if you can imagine. Other members of the group then entered the home, taking 2 guns and 2 boxes of ammo and around $500. Natasha was said to be so desperate to escape her life, she claimed that she had spoken to angels and demons since she was 4 years old. She was obsessed with witchcraft and would refer to herself as Satan's daughter. There's a lot of people that does that apparently, especially through the stories I read. He must have got around good old Satan. She threatened her mother with a knife and would tell her friends that she had dreams of living out one of her favorite movies. Oh, guess what it is? This is a common theme through the ages too. Natural born killers. From a young age, she had been drinking alcohol and using illegal drugs such as heroin, ecstasy, cocaine. Natasha was extremely close to Karen. Karen grew up in a violent household and claimed that she was SA between the ages of 5 and 10 by her uncle and her cousin. She had a fascination with the occult and witchcraft and also regularly used illegal drugs. Joseph, who was the oldest of the group, had a good had been a good student up until his mother and stepfather divorced. He then started drinking and using drugs, and he had previously dated Natasha, but was now dating Karen. And Natasha was dating another member of the group, Edward, who seemed to have the most normal life of the 6. He was working towards his GED and had gained it, and had a job at the local grocery store. However, once he became involved with Natasha, who he was planning to marry, his behavior deteriorated significantly. Jason, the youngest of the group, that's the 14-year-old, was already on probation and despite his young age, had a long history of drug and alcohol abuse. He had the IQ of around 85, and his emotional and social skills were said to be severely undeveloped. It was reported that he had let Natasha carve her initials into his arm to show his strength for pain. Crystal was fairly new to the group. She had performed fairly well in school, but offered emotional was emotionally neglected at home. In December 1996, she accused her stepfather of SA and was thrown out of her house. She ended up living in various different locations and with people over the following few months, including Natasha, as the groups traveled south on 181. Delphina attempted to keep, now we're back into the minivan and they're kidnapped and rest area. There's the ones we're talking about. Look at that gorgeous group. Oh my. There's our president somewhere in there. Delphina attempted to keep her children calm by singing to them until Jason ordered her to shut up. Young Tabitha even offered Karen one of her chocolates during the drive. Oh. Shortly before 9 p.m. that evening, two calls were made to 911 reporting gunshots on Payne Hollow Lane in Greenville. Someone who lived nearby said that they had heard shots and seen 2 vehicles pull in, but only one come out. The second person was a contractor working on a water tower and heard 2 bursts of gunfire, one after another. and the other followed by muddled commotion like children on a playground. Deputy Jeff Morgan and his supervisor arrived around 9 o'clock at the scene. They initially saw headlights of the blue Chevrolet Citation, lovely car, at a strange angle in the road. Sorry, it had clearly been abandoned, having got stuck on top of a tree trunk in the mud. The car was empty and the license plate had been removed. It was found that in the ditch next to the car, which would stay with them forever, there were four bodies: a man, a woman, and two young children, a boy and a girl. The girl was laying on top of her, which was Tabitha, 6 years old, was laying on top of her father, and the 2-year-old Peter was laying on top of Delphina. All four had gotten shot, and Vidal and Delphina's legs had gotten crushed by the car on the minivan as they took off. As the police investigated further, Tabitha made a slight movement and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors at the University of Tennessee Medical Center in Knoxville worked through the night trying to save the little girl, but she was pronounced dead the following day. Meanwhile, Peter was laying across his mother's body with his face in the mud. As Deputy Jeff Morgan turned him over, Peter let out a cry. The deputy sat and held him until the ambulance arrived, and Peter was also rushed to the hospital. He survived, but he suffered spinal cord damage. He lost an eye. It was thought that he would have suffocated if he had been in the mud any longer. At the autopsy, Dr. Blake, concluded that the family had got lined up along the ditch and shot one after another. It's believed that Valdale was killed first. He was shot in the right eye, an injury that would have rendered him unconscious immediately. And then he was shot four more times while lying in the ditch. Delphina was originally shot in the left arm and then in the left leg, wounds that were not fatal. She was shot six more times, and it was believed that she was most likely alive during the subsequent attacks on her children and when she was run over by the minivan. Tabitha had been shot once in the head. Peter had been shot twice. The first bullet entered his head behind his right eye. The second bullet hit him in the back. When trying to escape, the Chevy Citation had gotten wedged on top of a tree stump. So the group jumped into the minivan driving over Vidal and Delphina as they rushed away. Excuse me. Despite the license plates of the Citation having been removed, the minivan's VIN number was still intact on the car, which allowed for authorities to trace the owner. This was Joseph's mother, Mary Castle. She told the police that she hadn't seen her son in 2 days and didn't know where he was. However, she did know who he was with, and she gave the police the name of the other five members of the group that were also missing. The police now know exactly who they are looking for and that what they're traveling in, what kind of vehicle. And less than 48 hours later, around 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 8th, 1987, the Dodge minivan was stopped at a checkpoint at the U.S. Mexican border at Douglas, Arizona. The occupants had failed to show their correct paperwork and claiming that they were lost. Um, when they were asked to step out of the van and who owned it, the driver, Joseph, shrugged and said he didn't know who owned it. And so they had the group get out. They were ordered out of the vehicle, placed under arrest, and they were taken to Cocais County Jail. I know I'm probably screwing that up, but there it is. During booking, the officers asked Natasha her religious preference. She reported Satan. They found several items that belonged to the Lillelid family. Natasha had a piece of Vidal's belt and a picture of Tabitha in her purse. Karen had a Hello Kitty diary lock that belonged to Tabitha. Crystal had a key to the family's home on a key ring, their key ring. And none of these items had any value, so the cops believe that it was taken as trophy of their kills. Excuse me. This is the ditch they were at, and this is their headstone, and people were leaving rocks out there and stuff. So, yeah, yeah. And they got stopped at the border. The DA bail sought in immediate extradition, immediate extradition for the group so that they would return to Tennessee to face trial, and made it known that he would be seeking the death penalty for the four adults involved. The juveniles Karen and Jason were facing potential life sentences without the possibility of parole. There was outrage over the mindless and random killings was intense in Knox County. A convenience store owner hung 6 nooses off of a scaffold in front of his business, claiming that he was against lynching but pro capital punishment. A crowd chanting "Burn in Hell" had assembled when the four adults were escorted by the deputies back to Greene County Criminal Court. Judge Eddie Beckner denied repeated defenses requests for the 6 to be tried separate, however, ruled that was finding a fair judge in Greene County would be impossible, and as such, the jury would be a bust. In the Bradley County, which is about 150 miles away, the trial date was set for March 1998. However, the trial never came in February, all 6 defendants took a plea deal that pled guilty to all charges of murder and attempted murder as part of the plea deal to avoid the death penalty, and an actual truth of who fired the fatal shots. Who did what on April the 6th remains unknown, each of the 6 telling different stories of what happened when they arrived at Payne Hollow Lane. Those close to the case struggle to fully believe any of the versions of the events. Natasha, Karen, Joseph all maintain that it was the 14-year-old Jason who had been the only shooter, that they said once he exited the van, that he had an argument over what to do with the family, at which point Jason started shooting. In the opinion of many, the idea of a single shooter does not match up with the forensics, and some believe that there were at least 2 shooters using 2 guns. Jason claims that there were other 3 made up the story when they realized that he would not be facing the death penalty because of his age and would potentially have a lighter sentence due to his age. He claims that Joseph and Edward were the ones that had fired the shots that night. By most account, it is agreed that Crystal, who had always maintained that she did not hurt anyone, did not leave the car during the shootings. However, as part of her plea deal, all 6 were given the same sentence, 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, with additional consecutive sentence of 25 years in prison for attempted murder on Peter's life. Appeals were filed in Karen Howe and Jason Bryant due to the later U.S. Supreme Court decision that restricts the imposition of life sentences and juveniles. These appeals have been denied, and all 6 remain in Tennessee prison. After a lengthy hospital treatment, including a prosthetic eye and numerous complicated surgeries, and also a custody battle between Vidal and Delfina's families, Peter eventually went to live with his father's sister in Sweden. He has recovered significantly, but not fully, for his injuries and returned to the U.S., where he is now married and works in IT. That concludes today's stories. I want to thank you. Um, and this is Peter. As always, I want to thank you for joining me. I'm going to try to upload another video tonight, so be sure to like, share, subscribe, do all the things that doesn't cost you anything. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me. Bye.